You know those people who think the world revolves around them? Yeah, that's exactly what happened when one of my HOA neighbors decided to hold her yoga classes in my backyard, without asking. At first, I thought it was just a weird misunderstanding. Maybe she needed extra space or was just being friendly. But nope, it turned out she had no intention of respecting my property or privacy. She just assumed it was fine. Can you imagine the audacity? I wasn't going to let this slide. I mean, this wasn't just about a quiet, relaxing yoga session. It was about someone thinking they could do whatever they wanted, all because of their own entitled attitude. So I decided to give her a little taste of her own medicine. I cranked up the speakers, put on my favorite metal playlist, and blasted it at full volume. Picture this: the peaceful serenity of yoga meets the chaos of thrashing guitars and pounding drums. But here's where it gets interesting. Did she pack up and leave, or did she try to fight back? Was this the end of the yoga invasion, or was the HOA about to get involved? Stay tuned to find out what happened next. It all started about a week ago, when I noticed the yoga mats laid out in my backyard. At first, I figured it was some sort of mistake. Maybe a neighbor accidentally left them there. But then I saw her, the woman from 2 houses down, gathering a small group for what looked like an outdoor yoga class. I was confused, but more than that, I was annoyed. Not once had she come to ask me if it was okay. No note, no heads up, nothing. This wasn't the first time I'd had run-ins with her, either. She's always been the type to push boundaries, always making little demands as if she's entitled to everything. I remember one time she tried to get the HOA to paint my front door a different color because it didn't fit with the neighborhood vibe. So seeing her set up her little yoga studio in my backyard felt like the last straw. I tried to ignore it the first few days. Maybe she'd get the hint or someone would say something. But no, every afternoon without fail, there she was again, stretching and posing right in my space. That's when I snapped. I couldn't just let her think she had free reign over my yard. It was time to make a statement, and let me tell you, I didn't hold back. What happened next, though, was a bit more than I bargained for. The first day I cranked up the metal music, I was half expecting her to pack up and leave. But no, she just stared at me like I was the one who was out of line. Her face was a mix of shock and disbelief, as if she couldn't fathom someone standing up to her. I could see her hesitating for a second, glancing at the small group of people she had with her. I thought maybe they'd leave, but they didn't. They just sat there, trying to ignore the noise, adjusting their poses as though the sound of guitars and drums weren't shaking their zen. The next day she came back. This time, there was no hesitation. She'd clearly made her own little stand. As I cranked up the speakers again, I saw her wave over a few more people. She wasn't just trying to have her yoga class anymore, she was trying to make a point. This wasn't about relaxation for her. It was about winning, about showing she could take whatever she wanted, regardless of what anyone else thought. But that's when things started to spiral. The HOA, of course, got involved. I wasn't surprised when I got a letter in the mail, calling me out for causing disturbance and violating neighborhood peace. I knew she had something to do with it, but what really got under my skin was the tone of it. It felt like they were siding with her. The whole thing started to feel less about yoga and more about power. Whose backyard was this, really? Was I going to let this entitled neighbor push me around, or was I finally going to stand my ground? The days that followed felt like a slow burn. The tension between me and my neighbor grew more palpable with each encounter. She didn't just stop at holding her yoga classes. No, she started putting up signs, little reminders about community peace and neighborhood harmony. It felt like a personal attack, like she was rubbing it in that she had that HOA's support, while I was left with nothing but a growing sense of injustice. I knew something had to change, but I wasn't sure what. Every time I turned on the music, she just stayed there, staring me down like she was daring me to escalate things further. It felt like a game to her. Meanwhile, the HOA kept sending me more letters, each one more insistent than the last. The pressure was mounting, and I felt myself starting to crack under the weight of it all. The entire neighborhood felt divided. Some of them whispered support for me, but no one was willing to do anything openly. Everyone was afraid of the HOA, afraid of stepping out of line, and then it happened. One afternoon, as the sun was starting to set, she showed up with something new. This time she wasn't alone. There were more people, about a dozen of them, all spread out in my yard like it was her personal studio. I was done holding back. I hit play on the speakers, but this time I didn't just go for my usual metal. No, I turned the volume up to the max and picked the heaviest, most aggressive tracks I could find. I could hear her yelling something from across the yard, but the music drowned her out. And that's when I saw the figure approaching me, someone from the HOA, clipboard in hand. I could feel the storm coming, but what happened next? Well, it was the last thing I expected. I watched as the HOA representative walked towards me, clipboard in hand, his face tight with disapproval. The air was thick with tension, the heavy metal pounding in the background, making everything feel even more intense. As he approached, I braced myself for the usual cease and desist talk. But then something unexpected happened. He stopped a few feet away, looked around, and then glanced at the group of people lounging in my backyard. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice surprisingly calm for the situation. I raised an eyebrow, unsure of whether he was playing some kind of game, or if this was the moment he'd finally tell me to turn the music off and comply. But then, without any warning, he turned to face the neighbor who'd been holding the yoga classes. "You're not authorized to use this property for business purposes," he said, his tone shifting from polite to serious. "You've been hosting classes here without the proper permits." I was stunned. This was the HOA guy, the one who had been sending me letters, telling me I was in the wrong. But here he was, calling out the neighbor who had been the real source of the issue all along. I couldn't believe it. The woman had been using my yard as her private yoga studio, making money off of it, and I was the one getting the heat. The tension in the air thickened even more as the neighbor's face went pale. She tried to stammer a response, but the HOA rep wasn't having it. "We'll need to discuss this at the next board meeting. Until then, this needs to stop." He turned to me then, his gaze softening just a little. "And you, no more noise complaints, all right?" It was the first time anyone had stood up to her, and I couldn't help but feel a mix of victory and disbelief. But just as I thought the situation might finally be turning in my favor, the neighbor's eyes locked onto mine, full of pure venom. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. I had no idea what her next move would be, but I knew it was coming, and it was going to be big. As the HOA rep turned to leave, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It was like the weight of the situation was about to explode. The neighbor, still standing there in my yard, was visibly furious, her fists clenched at her sides. She wasn't going to just let this go, not after everything she'd put me through. I braced myself for whatever she had planned next. As I watched her storm off toward her house, I couldn't help but think I had finally won. After all the chaos, all the noise, and the tension, the neighbor was getting what was coming to her. But as I stood there, the music fading into silence, I heard the faintest sound, a distant click of a door closing. Before I could process what had just happened, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and froze. There, in a group chat with some of my neighbors, was a message from her. "I hope you're ready for this. I'm taking this to the next level." What did that even mean? My heart skipped a beat as I read the next part. "I got something that will make sure you're the one getting fined. I've already spoken to the HOA. They've just been waiting for the right moment to come down hard on you." My blood ran cold. Somehow, she had turned the tables. I had just assumed the HOA was on my side, but it was clear now they had been playing both sides. They had all been waiting for me to make one wrong move, and I had done it. She had used me as a pawn, and I hadn't even realized it until it was too late. Just as panic began to set in, a final notification popped up on my screen. It was a picture of my own backyard, taken from the neighbor's window. And behind me, clear as day, was a small, makeshift yoga mat, something I didn't even remember seeing. She'd planted it there, set me up, and now she had the proof she needed to make it look like I'd been running unauthorized classes. The game was over. She had won, or so I thought, because in that moment I realized something. I wasn't the only one who could play dirty. I didn't waste time panicking. I knew I had to act fast, so I made a plan. The next day, I showed up at the HOA meeting unannounced, with my phone in hand.